from a national security situation.
We are making heavy investments in the Arctic. We'll be working with our Nordic partners. We'll be working through NATO.
Firstly, I believe the American president should be taken seriously when he says that he wants Greenland. If the United States chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops.
A former NATO commander is warning that the United States may be approaching a line no alliance was ever designed to survive. Not because of a war, not because of an invasion, but because of an idea openly stated by Donald Trump, that the United States needs Greenland for its national security, and that using the military is always an option.
We need Greenland from a national security situation. It's so strategic.
The language is calm, measured, almost bureaucratic, and that is precisely why it has unsettled officials across NATO capitals. Because alliances don't collapse from outrage, they collapse from precedent. For the first time since the end of World War II, senior figures inside the NATO system are openly discussing a scenario that was once considered impossible.
Under the 1951 agreement, updated in 2004, the US would simply have to go to the government in Greenland, the government of Denmark, and say, we want to increase our footprint, we want access to the following ports, bases. There would be almost inconceivable for the government of Denmark and Greenland.
One NATO member seizing territory from another. There is no framework for that. No contingency plan. No rulebook. Canada's former chief of the defense staff has said plainly that such a move would not trigger a crisis inside NATO. It would shatter it. That warning is not coming from political opponents or commentators. It is coming from someone who spent decades operating inside the alliance's command structure. Before we go further, a quick and polite note. If you find this kind of in-depth, fact-based geopolitical analysis valuable and you'd like to support the work directly, super chats are always appreciated during the stream. They help keep this channel focused on serious, independent analysis. Thank you for being here.
We strongly support your right to determine your own future. And if you choose, we welcome you into the United States of America.
Within days of Trump's remarks, Denmark's Prime Minister issued a statement that quietly shook alliance capitals across Europe. If one NATO country attacks another, she said, then everything stops.
Well, if the US chooses to attack another NATO country, then everything stops.
And with it, the post-1945 security order. This is where the controversy becomes clear, not emotional but institutional. Because the real issue is not Greenland. The issue is whether rules still restrain power. The Trump administration has framed Greenland as a strategic necessity.
Greenland should be part of the United States. The president has been very clear about that.
Arctic access, critical minerals, positioning against Russia and China. Those arguments are not irrational. But method matters.
If you take a look outside of Greenland right now, there are Russian destroyers, there are Chinese destroyers and bigger, there are Russian submarines all over the place. We're not going to have Russia or China occupy Greenland, and that's what they're going to do if we don't. So we're going to be doing something with Greenland, either the nice way or the more difficult.
Once a country claims the right to take allied territory in the name of its own security, the alliance model begins to unravel. Security becomes unilateral, trust becomes conditional. Canada is watching this carefully, not because Canada expects to be targeted, but because Canada understands what happens when norms erode.
The future of Greenland is a decision for Greenland and for Denmark exclusively. It's their decision.
For decades, Canada operated under a stable assumption. The United States led, but within limits. Allies disagreed, but borders were respected. That assumption is now being tested. If you're new here, this channel focuses on calm, evidence-based analysis of geopolitics, power shifts, and global institutions. If that's something you value, consider subscribing. Behind closed doors in Ottawa, the conversation has already shifted. The question is no longer, is this realistic? The question is, what if it happens? This is where Mark Carney becomes highly relevant. Carney is not a populist. He is not a nationalist. He is not a political firebrand. He is a system manager. Throughout his career, from financial crises to sovereign instability, Carney's focus has always been resilience, reducing overdependence on any single pillar. Applied to geopolitics, the logic is simple. When a system relies too heavily on one actor, instability in that actor becomes a systemic risk. Canada's growing concern is not whether the United States remains an ally, it is whether Canada has become structurally vulnerable to American unpredictability. This explains why several conversations are now accelerating at once: Arctic sovereignty, critical minerals, supply chains, independent intelligence capacity. These are not reactionary moves, they are structural adjustments. Canada's former military leadership has described the current moment as an accelerant, not the start of global disorder, but the phase where disorder becomes undeniable. The rules-based world order did not collapse overnight. It weakened gradually. What is happening now is speed, and speed is what turns stress into fracture. Inside the United States, strain is visible as well. Senior military leaders have been removed. Public debates about lawful versus unlawful orders are taking place openly. Civil military norms are under pressure. In any democracy, that would be destabilizing. In the world's dominant military power, it has global consequences. Canada's military relationship with the United States remains essential. Joint commands and intelligence cooperation are not being abandoned, but they are being reassessed. Former Canadian national security advisors are now arguing that Canada must be able to independently verify intelligence that affects its sovereignty. Not because allies are enemies, but because trust without verification is no longer sufficient. This marks a quiet but significant shift, not anti-American, post-assumption. And again, this reflects the mindset Carney represents. His response to uncertainty is not confrontation, but insulation. Strengthening institutions, reducing single points of failure. The deeper issue here is not Trump's personality. It is what happens when power signals that restraint is optional. When the White House says the use of force is always an option, even hypothetically, planners must assume that option exists. Once that assumption enters strategic planning, everything downstream changes. NATO was designed to deter external threats. It was never designed to manage internal force between members. If that line is crossed even once, the alliance becomes something else entirely. That is why officials are using the word shattering. Because broken trust does not reform into its original shape. For Canada, the response is not escalation, it is adaptation. The United States remains Canada's closest ally. That has not changed. What has changed is the belief that alliances alone guarantee predictability. In geopolitics, predictability is power, and right now, predictability is eroding. This moment will not be remembered for whether Greenland ever changed hands. It will be remembered for whether the idea itself went unanswered. Because once allies accept that force is negotiable among friends, the post-war order does not end with explosions. It ends quietly, and systems that end quietly rarely come back.